Welcome back, guys. This is going to be our video lesson on lesson 712, day 2. Today we're going to focus on building the graph of the sine function. So yesterday we kind of got into the nitty-gritty of going around this Ferris wheel ride called the Screamer and figuring out the heights off of the ground for each of the car positions that we see in this diagram here. Okay, so we kind of went through that. We drew the individual triangles, we set up the sine functions, and we solved for the side of the triangle that represented the height for each one of these. Some of you guys might have figured out patterns as you started going along. So just a couple of observations about the table. You might have noticed that these values repeat themselves, the 0, the 0.259, the 0.5. You see those pop up in different parts of the table, and you know, they repeat themselves as you go, and that's kind of part of the sine function. So really, once you get one part of this table done, you've gotten the rest of it done if you can figure out the pattern in which order it goes. Okay, there's also, you know, again, the same values but negative, right? So once we get to the 180 degree mark, right, so if you kind of think about our ride here, if we rotate 180 degrees, we had said that this horizontal that runs across the ride, that was ground level, and then it's at this point that you start descending into the pit. So all of these produce negative heights down here. Okay, so we see all those negatives happening after 180. Here we see all those negative heights in our table. All right, so we're going to focus on building the graph so we can see what the shape of this graph looks like. And remember, this graph represents the heights off of the ground as we progress through this ride. And since we used the sine function to find every single one of these things, this graph actually represents the sine function. All right, so here we go. Graphing is no different than what we have ever done before. We're going to treat the angle from the car, or angle from car 1. That's going to be what goes along the x-axis. So these are the x values right here. Okay, the heights off the ground, that represents our y-axis. So these are our y values, and we just plot them as ordered pairs. So this first one here is at 0, 0. So I'm just going to go to 0, 0 and click and put a point there. The next one is at 15 and 2.259, so we rotate 15 degrees into the ride, and then our height is about 0.259, and you can just eyeball it. It's pretty forgiving. You don't have to be super exact. It just has to be in pretty close to the right spot, but not super exact. All right, it'll still count it right even if you're off a little bit. Okay, so the next one's at 30 and 0.5, so I'm going to go to the right 30 degrees, and I'm going to go up to 0.5 and put a point. And then we would just keep repeating this, right? So we got 45 and 0.707, so about right here. We start to see this shape form. So we go to 60 degrees, and it's going to be at 0.866, so about right here. And then we've got 0.966, so 75 and 0.966, so here. And then let's see, keep it on going, 90 and 1. And then we start to come back down, right? So another thing you should probably observe is that at 90 degrees, that's when we reach the highest point of the ride. That is the largest value that this function will achieve. And then we start to go back down, and we see those repeating values again, right? So we're going to come back down to 0.966, and then back down to 0.866 again right here. Every 15 degrees, we just kind of go over, and we repeat those values, those same heights on the way down. And you start to see the shape of our graph form here. Now it doesn't stop here at 180. We start going down into the pit, so we're going to be going down here and completing the rest of this curve. So we're going to go to 195 next, so 195 degrees into the ride. We're at negative 0.259. Then at 210, we're at negative 0.5. All right, so we're descending down 225 to negative 0.707, and then negative 0.866, about right here, and then at 235, 0.966, Then at 270 we're at -1. This is the lowest point, so this is the very bottom of the pit for the Screamer ride. And then we're going to start coming back up because we're going to get off the ride once we've completed one full rotation here. So that's going to happen at 360, so we've got to start coming back up to get back to ground level. Okay, so we're going to repeat all of those values on the way back up. Alright, so really I'm just going over every 15 degrees here and repeating those values on the way back up. And there we go. So we can kind of see that shape, right? We see this is called a sine wave, or a sinusoidal wave is the technical term for it. And this wave would continue to repeat itself. So if we never got off the ride and we just kept on rotating around and around, this wave would just repeat itself over and over and over again. And they call that a sinusoidal wave. And what you are looking at here is one full cycle, one full revolution of the sine function. Okay. Now, when you click submit after you graph all of your points, if you get an orange box like this, it might be looking, it might have been that you didn't eyeball a point closely enough or something like that. It's okay, just go ahead and submit it, and I'm going to look at them by hand, and if I felt like they were close enough, then I will give it a full credit. Alright, so this happens, you're going to get that orange check mark. If you were off maybe a little bit or something, it's okay, it's not a big deal. And you can see your scores up here. That graph part was worth 0.5, so we got a 0.46, so it's just, there's one point that might be a little bit off here, but don't worry about trying to comb through and moving the points around. As long as it's close, I'm going to give it full credit when I go to grade them by hand. Alright guys, that's it for today's video. We're just, like I said, just focusing on making the graph today. If you got done early, you should probably go back and get something else done that you haven't completed yet. Alright guys, have a great day.